Hey there, everyone. It's Julie Hutchison here from Think, Be, Do Leadership. And today we are talking about the fact that we haven't got time for this, or we haven't done it because we haven't got time, or we didn't achieve. It's Friday. It's already afternoon. It's Friday afternoon, and we haven't achieved the things that we want to achieve. We haven't done the stuff that we wanted to do, and our to-do list is still as long as our arm and doesn't seem to be getting any smaller, and everybody else looks upon us and thinks this is what we think, maybe, that she hasn't done it again. And so I want to talk about, well, why is it that some people they get more done, they seem to do it with ultimate calm, and we're not talking about delegation here, but let's say maybe they do delegate really well, but that's not what I'm talking about at the moment. This is stuff that you are trying to get done, and you're not looking at delegated at the moment. That's another talk altogether. But how come is it some people seem to achieve the things they set out to do? They seem to just be the sort of people that pack it all in, and at the end of the day, they're like, oh, I've achieved all this, and they've ticked it all off. And you're left there looking at them, feeling frustrated with yourself, overwhelmed, fed up, and distraught by the fact that you've still got like 100 million things on the list, and they just don't seem to be going away. And it's Friday, and you're probably going to have to work at the weekend. Maybe some of that relates to you. So if you are listening to this live, then please say hello. I'd love to hear your comments as we talk through this. And if you're on the replay, just put hashtag replay, and we will be looking at what comments you're making afterwards. So yeah, love to say hello. So what are we talking about then? So we want to look at really a couple of things that make us not achieve those things that we want to achieve, and to not have enough time, because we're all busy, aren't we? And that's the thing. Those people that achieve don't seem to have less to do. They just seem to have got more done, which is interesting. And so I want to look at it from that perspective of not, we'll get rid of some stuff, but how can you achieve more with what you have? Because as I said, that's something different. So this overwhelm that we're feeling is actually one of the, hello, Richard. Hi, nice to see you. This overwhelm that we feel actually is like a little vicious circle. And hello, Katie, as well. Nice to see you. It's like a vicious circle, because if we're overwhelmed, then the last thing we want to do or the last thing we're going to do is achieve all the things we've got to do, because our brain is racing. We can't pick one thing. And we just seem to maybe we end up scrolling through Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that, because we almost feel like, I need this. I need to get to get my head right. So we try to do things that make us feel better. So we're kind of soothing ourselves. But again, that really means that we still don't get anything done. And then we look and think, how did I manage to spend 20 minutes on Facebook or on LinkedIn or whatever, looking at interesting things? And so that overwhelm can cause the problem of itself, and is the problem in and of itself. Okay, so that's the other thing. And now, one more thing. The belief that we can either do this or we can't do it is also something, I think, that means that we don't use our time properly. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is, and the reason why I was bringing this up is because I was speaking to a lovely man this morning, one of my clients, who was saying to me, well, I just can't do that. And he was talking about being overwhelmed, and that he procrastinated and was very overwhelmed. And what he did was he focused on, I didn't achieve, so I can't achieve. So what I mean is that he focused on his all or nothing. Okay. Now, I don't know about you, Richard, Katie, or anyone else who's listening, that generally it isn't as clear cut as success or not success, or nothing, or failure or success. And in the army, I think it's the army. My husband will probably shoot you now because he was in the army. But they say, is it no plan ever made for contact, or ever survived contact with the enemy? Okay. And so what I was hearing from him, and I've heard it many times, is like, I didn't get that, or I didn't do that, and I haven't achieved it by 9 o'clock that I was meant to, so I won't bother. And it wasn't even a conscious I won't bother, I think, in a way. It was a case of I've failed, I've messed it up, so that's out the window. So you don't feel like you want to do it because you feel like you've already failed. And so this phrase, no plan ever makes no plan ever survives contact with the enemy, This is really relevant here, because if we're going to tell ourselves, if our belief is that we're either like achieved or haven't achieved, then we're just going to mess it up every time it doesn't go exactly to plan. But if we can accept that, yeah, you know what, even if it isn't exactly as it was meant to be, then at least I've tried, at least I've had a go, and I'm not going to beat myself up for it not being perfect. And so I want to talk about some of this stuff, because what was happening for him was that focusing on all or nothing and being overwhelmed allowed him to procrastinate and to not do, because he felt bad and he didn't want to do it because he didn't want to feel even worse. And therefore, he was kind of like shooting himself in the foot and not achieving. And his list is getting longer. So I want to talk about three things. Firstly, that planning thing, because I'm not a planner, if I'm honest. Really, I kind of like to be free to be able to do the things I want to do. But we're going to talk about planning. But we're going to talk about planning in a fun way. Secondly, we're going to talk about being conscious of our thinking and our behaviour. Now, have you ever heard the phrase, we're going to watch ourselves on TV? Maybe not. Not if you've ever been on TV, that's not what I mean. But what I mean is that we're going to start to get conscious. We're going to look upon ourselves as if we were watching ourselves on TV, because it isn't until we get a real grip of, like, what are we doing here? Am I scrolling through Facebook? Or how am I dealing with this? What's going on here? And not until we actually get conscious of that stuff on a regular basis, like most of the time, then we know what we're doing to ourselves and what that means. Then we can actually do something about it. Because if you're not conscious of it, you're just going to keep going on in your path of least resistance in your brain. You know, the pathways that you've created and the behaviors that you've created, you're just going to carry on. So I want us to get conscious. And the third one is that good old one of eat that frog, which what I mean is that, you know, you get this big long list. I'm looking for my list now. I don't really have a list anymore. But eat that frog is all about, well, actually, if we do the little things first, we feel a little bit like we've stroked ourselves. We feel a bit better. We make us feel still nice. But reality is all those little things don't add up to the big thing that we've been avoiding. Ever, Richard, Katie, if you're listening still, have you ever avoided anything? Have you ever actually sort of thought, I don't want to do that one? And then it stays on the list all that time. So we want to talk about eat that frog. But let me go back to this plan first. Okay, so here, I'm going to show you something now. It's very messy, and I do this on my computer, but I didn't want to share everything, so I'm going to share this one. This is my color-coded plan of my week. Now, like I said, no plan ever survives contact with the enemy, first contact with the enemy. But this plan was born out of the fact that I felt like I was overwhelmed and I wasn't achieving all the things I wanted to achieve. So what I sat down and did was I looked at the blocks of things that I was doing. So, like, am I delivering to my clients? Am I delivering training? Am I needing to do lives? Now, that's another thing. I was doing them less regularly. Now I'm like, oh, I need to do that. Now I block them in. They're in blue. Okay, my marketing, that's in blue as well. My admin is in yellow. I'm just looking here. Oh, walking the dog as well, because that's my downtime. That's in my, you'll see that, that's in my diary there. She doesn't even want to go for walks. It's raining, but there you go. And Katie, she says, what do you say, Katie, there? In the neurodiverse community, it is known as the wall of awful. I love that, Katie. Or you have to tell me more. Yes, love the color coding. Well, so do I, because this is why I say it's fun, because like lists are boring, aren't they? And we never want to do them because they're just endless. Okay, so let's take that off there. So when you color code your week, first of all, you're going to trigger your brain that this is the thing that you're meant to be doing here. Okay, so I'm delivering some training. I can't do that. It's doing it backwards. You're delivering some training here, yeah? And you're doing some marketing. So every day I want to spend this long. So if you set it out, yeah, okay, you might have a phone call, something might happen. But as we say, the more likely you are to do, no, the more you plan, the more likely you are to achieve that plan. But it's as a list, it means nothing. Okay, so here we can put things in our color coding. The color triggers us. We then are anchored in the thing that we're supposed to be doing and anchored in the timing. And we give ourselves permission if we put in things that we want to achieve, like downtime, like breathing. I don't mean just breathing generally. For example, if you feel a bit overwhelmed, there's an amazing GIF that you can use. And if you want me to share it with you, it's not mine. It's just an amazing GIF that I found. And it's a breathing GIF that's got a picture on it. So put that in your diary. If you need to stop and think and just let go, you need to be able to put that in the plan. Yeah. So there's the first thing. And this is really born out of triggers and anchors, but also you may well have heard of it. You know, the rocks, the sand and the water. You know, the jar of water where the jar of sand and rocks and water, where if you put the sand in first, all the little things in first, then you're going to fill that jar up and you can't get the big rocks in the top. Yeah. But if you put the rocks in first, the big things in first, then the sand trickles in afterwards and it goes in all the gaps, because there's going to be gaps unless they're square rocks, which they're generally not. Then they'd be bricks. So the sand goes in afterwards. So what you find is that when you put the big blocks in, all those things that you've been procrastinating about and doing, all the things you've been procrastinating about get in, and all the things that you've been doing in order to procrastinate, like all the little fiddly bits, so like checking your emails and that sort of thing, they'll still get done anyway, but they get done in the cracks. Yeah. And then if you put water in that jar, that goes around the rocks and around the sand and fills in even more space. Okay. So you must always put the big things in first. Yeah. You need to plan them in and then everything else fits around it. Katie says, I read once, what does that say? If you don't have a plan for your life, you'll become part of someone else's plan. Katie, that's amazing. Yeah, I like what you're saying today, Katie. Absolutely. And that's the other thing. I was talking to my client today and he was saying, well, I can't really put a lunch here. I don't really have a lunch break. Hope here we should have 45 minutes, but I hope for 15. Well, hang on a second. What do you mean you hope for 15? Because did you put it in? Did you tell people, Katie, this is along your lines, did you tell people that's your intention? Did you tell people that unless it's urgent and important, and that they should come to you in your lunch break, because you need the downtime to be able to pay attention in the uptime. Yeah. So absolutely, if you don't plan, then you'll become someone else's plan, in which case you're just a slave. Someone else's. I won't say that. That's rude. Somebody else's slave. Okay. So where that's taking me is to eat that frog. Who wrote that? That's now escaped me. Katie, do some research for me. I can't remember the guy's name. Eat that frog is brilliant. What they mean is that I'll summarize. Eat that frog is exactly that. It's those big rocks, but we're going to call them horrible, hairy, yucky frogs. The last thing you want to do, right? If you do the last thing you want to do first, then everything else feels easier. But what happens is naturally we go and do the easy things and we procrastinate with all those little bits of sand and stuff like that, and we don't do the difficult thing. But once we've done the difficult thing, everything else is so much easier and we get everything else done anyway. So actually, we should eat the frog first, however old and hairy and horrible it is deal with that issue, get it out of the way, stick it in your diary and say, I'm going to do that day, and then be conscious and stick to what you say. Because all of this stuff, you can plan, you can draw. This is beautiful, this thing. Although I do it in my Outlook now. But if you plan it, but then you go ahead and ignore the plan because you don't believe it. Thank you, Brian Tracy. It is well done. Name is well done. Thank you, Katie. So if you believe in yourself and you believe what you're saying, and this takes me back to the can do rather than the can't do. If you believe in what you're saying, then you'll actually follow the plan. But if you tell yourself that, I'm just making this plan because somebody's told me to, like Julie, but I don't really believe that I can do this, then of course you're going to stop yourself from doing that. Okay. So what I want you to do is also then is get conscious of your behavior. So let's go back to that TV, is watch yourself. Watch yourself as if you were watching yourself on TV and say, hang on a second. Look what I'm doing now. Isn't that interesting? This is what I'm doing here to avoid the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. Okay. So when you do these three things, so you make your plan instead of your list and you color code and you commit to big rocks and things that you want to put in, including downtime, then you will be able to see and be anchored and triggered by the colors, by the planning and all of those things. Okay. If you then are conscious of your behavior and your thoughts and realize what you're telling yourself, because we tell ourselves a huge load of stories about what we can and can't do. Yeah. So we look at that, conscious of our behavior. What am I telling myself? Am I telling myself that I can't do this? Because I need to stop that and get conscious of it. And then eat that frog. Richard says, what does Richard say here? Mark Twain said, eat a frog first thing in the morning. Well, maybe that's where Brian Tracy got it from, because I think Mark Twain is older than Brian Tracy. The theory being that after that, nothing else would seem bad. Oh, that sounds like Brian Tracy definitely linked that with Mark Twain then, didn't he? So thank you very much, Richard. And absolutely, if you do the thing that you don't really want to do first, one, you've got it out of the way. Two, you feel like a success because you've tackled the thing, you've done it, yeah? And three, everything else is easier after that, because nothing could be as bad as a disgusting hairy frog. Imagine eating, I'm vegan, I wouldn't eat the frog anyway, but let's go with the frog. Yeah, absolutely. And so when you look at people who are successful and manage their time really well and get all these things done, it's not because they're super clever. It's not because they've got less to do or more people to delegate to, whole other matter. It's because they don't just sit there and be overwhelmed and let their beliefs take over themselves and lose that focus and just then get lost and beat themselves up over how much they haven't done. What they do is they anchor themselves in the plan, they make sure they know what they want to achieve, and then they are aware of their thinking and behaviors, of whether they are actually following that plan, whether they are actually doing the things that they committed to doing. Now, if you do all of this, I said it will make you more effective, more confident in your ability, and less stressed. Yes, definitely less stressed because you've done more and you've got stuff ticked off. Effective, absolutely. And not only effective, is you will be seen to be effective, because when people see you achieving, they're going to look at you and think, wow, how are you doing that? And will be respecting the fact that when you said you were going to do something, you actually did it. I don't know about you and anybody else who's listening, but if you've ever been in a meeting, which you probably will have done, and people say, Julie, your action is to do this, and Katie, your action is to do this, and Richard, your action is to do this. And then you come back to the meeting the next month or week after and nobody's done anything, and then everybody gets let off. Imagine if you're not that person. And when you come back to that meeting, you're like, oh yeah, I've done all that and more. Yeah. And when you do this, it means that the time opens up to all the things you really do want to do, because once you get them off your plate, you feel better, you are more confident, you have got more time, and you have the time to go and develop some stuff that you really want to do. So it's a win-win. So I would urge you to get your pencils out. There we go. Get your pencils out and to color code your week and to block the things that you really want to do. So block your big rocks, but block your downtime, block yourself some breathing time. I'm going to find that GIF in a minute, and get conscious and get real. Put your big boy and girl pants on and actually look at yourself and say, is this me? Okay. It's not just a belief thing. It's not like, oh, I can't do it, so I won't bother. Yeah. And then last but not least, remember, no, still can't say it. Yeah. Remember about the army. Yeah. No plan ever survived first contact with the enemy. So give yourself this little tool, which is best case, worst case, and acceptable case. And what I mean by that is don't give switch yes or no. Did I do it or am I a failure? Say to yourself, well, if I want to achieve 2 of this, whatever it is, 2 talks with my team, for example, then the best case scenario is I actually would rather do 4. Yeah, I'd like to get 4 done, but 2 is enough. And 1 is the worst possible thing that I would do. Okay. Which means that if you don't get 2 done, you still manage to get 1 done. You haven't completely failed, which means you don't tell yourself you're a failure and you don't then stop and go and hide in the corner. And 4 would be amazing, because once you've done the 2 and you've achieved your acceptable, suddenly you feel better. And then you suddenly seem to manage to do the extra 2 because you feel good about it. So it's like going to the gym. Yeah. So I like that. Best case, worst case, acceptable. Yeah, you must at least do acceptable. But if something comes in and pushes you for some reason, then the worst case is okay. But you don't plan for worst case. You plan for acceptable and hope for best. How's that? I quite like that. So if this has been of use to you, then please feel free to put something in the comments. That's great. And if you would like to know more about how you can be more effective and have a bigger impact in your business or anywhere really, but particularly in your business or as a leader within your business, then message me and I will give you the details of how you can join our Leaders Launchpad, where we go through strategies like this, but also around how to have the right mindset, behaviors, and actual strategies that are practical and accessible for normal people in good businesses who just want to get on with being a good leader. So there you go. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Oh, Richard's just put something on there. Sorry. We've got another comment from Richard. You got it right. Oh, I'm not sure I can actually pronounce that. Graf Helmuth Karl Bernhard von Moltke was a Prussian field marshal. No plan, survives contact with the enemy. Richard, I like having you on my live. Are you and Katie like a little resource for me? Thank you very much. Exactly that. No plan, survives contact the enemy. But that doesn't mean then you shouldn't plan. It means you plan and accept that there's a best case, a worst case, and an acceptable one. So have a fantastic weekend. Thank you for your comments, guys. And if you're listening to this on replay, do make some more comments as well. And we will be happy to reply. Remember, if you want to join the Facebook group, it's Quiet Leaders with Impact. See you there. Bye-bye.